That night, the wind howled on the porch like an engine with a bad bearing, spooling up, choking, dying, over and over. The living room smelled like wood smoke and pork fat. Caleb's trophy photo still hung dead center over the fireplace like a flag. Dad was sunk in his recliner, beer tapping the armrest with a dry little clack. Mom blocked the kitchen doorway like a gate guard, eyes scanning me for anything out of line. I set my beat-up flight gloves on the table and, without thinking, rubbed my thumb over a crust of JP8 like I needed to remind myself, you've got a life outside this house. How long you plan on flying helicopters? Dad asked in that calm voice people use right before they throw a knife, pretending they are just sharpening it. Till you finally grow up, or till you hit a ridge line and they call us to come collect what's left. I swallowed and defaulted to radio etiquette. Short, clear. I run wildfire contracts in Arizona. We have our own safety manual. I know what I'm doing. Arizona, Mom sneered. Where people say you live in some kind of warehouse, that's what you're calling a home. A normal woman your age settles down. Caleb's got a family, a job here. And you? She flicked her chin at my gloves. Grease, diesel like some mechanic. Snow slashed the window in diagonal sheets. For a second, I could hear a rotor spooling to idle. That shaky first spin settling into something steady, and my heart wanted to match it. In this house, nothing ever settled. I'm here for one night, I said. I have to get back on the schedule tomorrow. Fire season came early. Dad set the bottle down, glass on wood, a sharp rap. You said you joined the Army for discipline. Discipline is a real education. College. Not joyriding a noisemaker for some contractor outfit. You know what folks call jobs like that? Work for people who couldn't cut it doing anything better. I tasted metal, the flavor patience gets when it starts to bleed. I almost launched into a sermon about checklists and logbooks and hours flown, about setting down on the ragged lip of a fire line with smoke so thick the nose light cuts it like a blade. But Mom wiped her hands on her apron, stepped closer, and drove the nail. Enough. This family is exhausted by your impulsive choices. Nobody needs you wrecking dinner. Get your things. It wasn't a scream. It landed steady, like a radio transmission read twice and confirmed by silence. I looked at her. She wasn't angry. She was calculating what the neighbors would say if I stayed through the weekend. Dad leaned forward to seal the verdict. Uneducated trash. Something cracked behind my eyes. My body didn't crack with it. It did what it's trained to do. I ran a silent checklist. Calm, observe, decide, act. I folded the gloves, slid them into my coat, grabbed the soot-kissed ball cap, scooped up the dog tags with the worn edges. Over the mantel, Caleb smiled forever with his trophy. I didn't look long. All right, I said light, like confirming a landing point. Copy. Mom stepped aside, revealing the mud-specked hallway. The only sound left was the wind. My boot tips clicked the boards on my way out. At the door, I paused. If this was my last call on this frequency, I was gonna read it clean. I'm driving back to Arizona tonight. Don't come back, Dad said from the chair without looking up. Not till you're somebody. I pulled the door. A fist of snow slapped my face, cold like a thrown bucket. My pickup was buried to the hubs. Fingers numb, I had to bend each knuckle to make the blood move before the key would turn. The engine caught with a low, comfortable growl, the way a rotor smooths out once it punches through the shake. The dash clock blinked once, 21:10. I dropped it into gear. Tires grated wet gravel. Inside, the house glowed warm and yellow like every Christmas I once imagined had a seat for me. Not tonight. I flicked the radio over to silence. Outside, the snow came hard, like all of Montana was trying to scrub out my tracks. At the county road, I stopped and cracked the window so the cold could slap me awake. I said one thing no one heard but the wind and me. Silence is also a tactic. Not running, choosing. Control your own breathing, same way you hold RPM before you raise the nose. I rolled the window up, cranked the wheel. Headlights washed over the family name carved into that old wooden sign, the letters looking like scars. On the highway, the tires bit into fresh powder, the wheels sending every little shiver up into my palms. I pictured the hangar in Arizona, cool concrete, clean metal, Riley's tool chests lined up like textbooks, Boone's whiteboard of flight slots, Ortiz laughing about something dumb over ICS. That place doesn't ask, "Are you good enough?" It asks, "Is it safe?" And "Are you ready?" I'd go there. I wouldn't text anyone for 3 weeks. I'd let the blank air do the talking, like a clear frequency makes the real signal easy to hear. When the snow finally fell back into my rear view, I nudged the heater up a notch. Left hand on the wheel, right hand still carrying the dry JP8 smell. My heartbeat clicked back into rhythm, the way a rotor finds its groove. A straight line opened in my headlights. It didn't promise anything except out. For tonight, that was enough. Sundays at our house always started with the TV screaming team names and ended with a knife thudding into a cutting board. Every meal like a little game where somebody won and somebody served. Dad treated ribs like a sacrament. "Real men know fire," he'd say. Then Caleb would show up right when the smoke looked prettiest, slide into the center chair beneath his high school trophy photo and take the best cut. Me, I'd orbit the table like a stagey hand, napkins, sauce, refills, waiting to hear my name so I could act surprised, like I'd just been called to the formation. Most nights, nobody called. Mom liked questions she could answer herself. "Did you hear Caleb's coach invited him to speak at the alumni club this week?" She'd sing while pouring water, a half pitch higher than normal. I'd say, "Yeah." The way you check off a parts list, enough, nothing extra. Dad would crank the volume right as the commentator praised Caleb's hands, then boom out a laugh. "That's our blood right there." Caleb would shoot me a wink, that winner's wink you give the person running lights backstage. I never hated my brother. I just learned early that love in our house got scored. Not the kind of points that show up on a report card. Points for being loud at the right moment, for making Dad proud in public, for not asking follow-ups. I was quiet, so I started logging other data, dates, textures, smells, grease-smoked sweater, cheap dish soap, noon snow melting into mud. I kept those like minutes from a meeting, proof for the day someone asked, "Did it really happen?" Christmas, when I was 16, I used money from the lawn mower repair shop to buy Dad a hammer with his name laser-etched in the head. I pictured him lifting it, seeing his name gleam and looking at me like he'd just discovered I could think. That morning under the tree, twinkle lights flickering like a noisy radio. Caleb got new shoes, Mom unboxed a waffle maker, and I handed over my small package. Dad tore the paper, looked at the hammer, said, "Huh, that's heavy," set it aside, and opened the toolkit from Caleb. The hammer lay on the edge of the rug, a drip of sap from the tree landing on the handle like sweat, and nobody touched it all day. That afternoon, I took it outside and drove a bent nail into the chicken coop siding. The ping in my chest was clean and straight. If that sound could talk, it would have said, "Accuracy is a kind of love." One winter night, I spiked a fever so hot the wool blanket felt like sandpaper on my skin. Pots clinked downstairs. I was thirsty, shuffled to the landing and heard my parents. Mom's voice went small, like she didn't want to wake some good child. Whichever one that was, it wasn't me. "If she won't do a proper college, what does she even become?" Dad's sigh creaked like a bowed plank. "She doesn't have that kind of fire. The kid's not built to stand up and speak." I gripped the banister, timed my breath in and out so it wouldn't catch. I was too tired to cry. I turned back up and penciled their words into my head. No fire. Next morning, I hit the school library at open. In the corner hung a curled poster, a black UH-60 ripping through cloud, sky clean as a page with no relatives on it. Underneath, the caption I read so many times I knew its rhythm. Once you've tasted flight, the rest was torn off. But I didn't need it. I stood there long enough the librarian asked if I needed help. "What's that one?" I pointed. "Black Hawk," she said. "Tactical transport." I smiled. Tactical and sky, side by side, felt cold and warm at the same time, like a gloved hand on a cockpit warmed up and ready. We had shop class at school. The boys came in to sweet-talk the belt sander for football club projects. I liked the hand drill, the way the bit ate into metal grain by grain. The teacher, a former Marine, cocked his head and asked from a distance, "You've got hands that respect tools. Ever think about the military?" I hadn't. The question threaded into me like a screw waiting for its match. One Sunday, while everyone watched highlight reels, Dad suddenly started helicopter mouth noises, loud enough the dog barked outside. The whole room laughed. I laughed to be courteous, but my laugh had no sound, just the feel of cold air slipping under a door. That night I opened the school website, found a faint little link under Career Resources. Military opportunities. I clicked it the way you thumb a starter for the first time. My finger moved, my heart wasn't sure. The recruiting appointment came fast. I chose a gray button-down, tied my hair back, brought a small notebook. I sorted questions in my head the way you organize washers by size. Before I left, Mom honeyed up her voice. "Why don't you come to the cookie club with the ladies from Caleb's band? So fun." "A library," I said. She shrugged. Wind blew grit into my eyes on the way to the bus stop, stung, but it woke me. The recruiting office smelled like burned coffee and copier paper. Branch photos lined the wall. I lingered at Army Aviation until a sergeant held out his hand. He had the smile of a man who spent a lot of life in the sun, kind, creased at the corners. "SGT. Morales," he said. "What are you looking for?" "A place that scores what I do," I said. He nodded me to a chair. We talked discipline, career tracks, scholarships, the rotary wing pipeline. "Is it hard?" I asked. "Hard," he said. "That's the point." I took tight notes. When we finished, he slid me a flyer and circled the next counseling slot, a clean little number like a starter button, 14:30. That night I got home late. The TV glowed. Caleb wore the smile of a fresh interview. Dad told me to grab him a beer. I set the bottle down like seating a bolt on the right thread. In my pocket, the folded flyer's edge nicked my thigh. Every time Dad said real college, I smelled burned coffee and heard Morales's steady voice. I saw that UH-60 poster like a window into a sky with no dinner table. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to keep the decision in my chest a while, like keeping a just-primed engine where only I could hear it purr. After that, I started waking earlier, beating the footprints to the library. I read aerodynamics, lift and drag, concepts that felt honest on contact. Nobody praised me at dinner, but in my head a small black helicopter kept turning. At night, while they laughed at some joke about field goals, I touched the corner of the flyer in my pocket, the cardstock stiff like a promise. Once Mom found it, skimmed, frowned. "Playing soldier for fun?" "Just looking," I said. She exhaled like it was a harmless hobby, like doodling. It wasn't harmless. It was an exit with an engine attached. Every time I passed that Christmas hammer sitting in the garage, fading under dust, I thought, if nobody wants the gift I bring, I'll build a place that needs these hands. This way I count rhythm, this precise quiet. I'll leave that table. I'll find a new one where people talk less and listen more, where the questions are, is it safe? And did you check? The night before 14:30, I clicked on my lamp, opened my notebook, and wrote one line. If they can't see the fire, prime the engine yourself. I closed the book and killed the light. Somewhere out there is sky nobody owns. Only the ones who learn earn the right to touch it. I didn't know how many times I'd drop or how many dinners would laugh. I'd already chosen a heading. Once you've got that, all the noise at the table fades into background static. The recruiting office was the size of a wooden crate dropped in the middle of town, curtains holding the smell of burned coffee, walls crowded with posters that had lost their shine. I sat across from SGT, Morales, the kind of man who stood in the sun long enough to learn not to promise quick miracles. He traced options on a printout with a ballpoint. Lots of paths, every single one spelled DISCIPLINE. I nodded like I was nodding at a flight plan. When he asked why the Army, I said, I want a place that scores what I do, not how loud I am at dinner. He laughed under his breath. Good. Around here, points are sweat and your signature on a checklist. Boot camp wasn't the shout fest I'd built in my head. It was a measuring tape. Straight steps, tight corners, sheets with knife edges. I learned to fold my exhaustion into one lung and let the other do the breathing. Morning runs pushed the fog out of me like pigeons off a roof. At night, the scuff of women's boots on barracks floors became music. Nobody asked, "Are you good enough?" The only question was, "Are you ready?" First day on the flight line, the earth hummed like a big animal sleeping. Birds in a row under the sun, black skins polished, nose glass reflecting the sky in broken tiles. Headset on. ICS line clicked in. My voice in my own ears, small but crisp. First time in the left seat. Right hand on the cyclic, left on the collective, palms damp like I'd been handed a secret. The instructor's cadence could have been a prayer. Clear left, clear right, fuel gauges, doors. I echoed him, engine growled. Rotor came alive, the air changed shape. And I thought, this is how the world lets you leave the ground without hurting it. My mentor was a Puerto Rican chief warrant named Vega, voice like steel-tempered, just right, never loud, impossible to ignore. He tapped my logbook. Don't let anybody write this for you. Every hour is sworn testimony. He taught me to stop watching people and start watching needles, cloud edges, the strange little noise in a sea of normal, like a misspelled word in a clean paragraph. In auto-rotation sim, when my heart dropped out like a bucket losing its rope, his hand touched the back of my seat. Trust physics, trust your hands, and don't let fear author your flight record. Between flights, I learned maintenance the way you learn a friend's habits. Wipe oil like you're wiping memory. Touch every fastener like roll call for your own alertness. Evenings in the post library, I read what sounded like code but laid out gentle order. Lift, drag, torque. Discipline stopped being a whip and turned into piping. How you route energy where it belongs. I wrote my parents a letter. Not long, not mushy. I told them about holding RPM by myself for the first time, sunlight coming through the nose glass, that feeling when the skids slip free and all the noise behind you falls away like a town at nap time. I folded it, stamped it, dropped it into the box like sending a neuron downstream. I waited, 1 week, 2. Mail call kept coughing up postcards from everywhere, but nothing with a Montana postmark. Lesson learned, silence obeys its own gravity. Pre-dawn in a briefing room, Vega sketched wind on the plexi board, pen tick-tick-ticking. "What do you want to be remembered for besides hours?" he asked. "For not dirtying the sky," I said. He looked up, gave me an approving grunt, then told stories about pilots who turned flight time into a code of conduct, no applause required. I got the invite into the mainline rotary track. Morales called to congratulate me. His voice had lost the bitter of burnt coffee and kept only the warm. I hung up and stood alone on the ramp, morning wind raking my hair, fuel smell grabbing my wrists. I didn't holler. I opened the logbook, wrote the date, drew the pen through a blank like crossing an actual threshold. That night I pulled my soot-kissed ball cap out of the ruck, thumbed the brim. It wasn't pretty. It was right. Later I got a short deployment, just long enough to understand the sky belongs to nobody and every safe landing is a debt paid in full. On a dusty strip, a kid waved, a hand like a leaf. I wasn't a hero. I was a standards bearer, making a metal animal behave itself with the earth. That night in a tent, I recopied the checklist in my own hand, like I wanted the ink sunk into bone. Back on post, Viga said, "Now you've got a spine made of discipline. Anyone can call you anything they want, but they can't take that unless you let go." I nodded. Somewhere inside me, a reply to our Sunday table finally took shape without a single word. Measure me by my checklist. I tried calling home again. Rings, rings, rings. No pickup. I set the phone down and put my forehead on the glass. The flight line outside was still as a photograph. My pulse synced with a rotor track I knew by heart, and a strange feeling washed through. Sad and steady at the same time, like the sky right before a wind shift. Next morning, Viga handed me a slip of paper, gear for the next leg, both the hardware and the invisible stuff. Cross-check habit, ability to listen when someone else is wrong. I clipped it into my logbook. A straight line drew itself in my head. From the girl standing at the edge of the dinner table to the woman in the left seat, hand on the stick, eyes on the horizon. When I officially got my next slot, I gave myself a small ceremony. Walked out to the empty pad, stepped into the middle of the white circle, breathed. Here my voice rides ICS, not family volume. Here every copy counts. I whispered, starting here. Morning air moved across my face like clean metal. The choosing wasn't something I said anymore. It was in the fibers of my hands where they meet the controls. The route ahead showed up like a pencil line in the sky, already marked. I stepped off the circle like someone finally leaving an old pair of shoes at the door. In the Army, checklists kept me from breaking things. In Arizona, I learned checklists also keep you from going broke. I drew 3 columns on the hangar whiteboard: income, expenses, reserves. Boone held the dry erase like a conductor's baton and smirked. "So you're turning accounting into navigation." I nodded. Everything needs a flight plan. We'd leased an old machine shop, tin roof that pinged like small arms fire at noon. Riley purged the rusty tool chests and wiped oil with rags folded neat as hospital towels. The cool metal and faint JP8 smell calmed me the way a steady rotor does. I scraped together every dollar, military savings, overtime, selling my old truck, to buy a ghost airframe, structure intact, engine needing overhaul, wiring hacked up like a town map after a storm. Delivery day, the flatbed groaned its way backwards. Riley and I stood with hands clasped like we were prepping for a heart transplant. Boone checked parts against the clipboard. Ortiz rolled his sleeves, eyes bright like a kid let loose in a hangar. I laid my palm on the gray skin, cold, honest. "You sure?" Boone asked. "As sure as sunrise in the desert," I said. "Other people saw scrap. I saw a flyer if treated right." We started at the spine, blades, mast, gearbox. Riley narrated each fastener like a friend's backstory. "This one loves to vibrate. That one loosens when temps swing." I learned to hear the odd squeak inside the roar. A tiny tick at high RPM, a hair-thin hiss when oil pressure is shy. Daylight was wrenches, blades, and filter baths. Nights were spreadsheets, entering invoices like coordinates, no rounding, not 1 cent. New rule: want waits behind need and 90-day cushion. The Army taught me to stand up straight. This taught me to stand up straight to money. Some nights the only sound in the hangar was a weather radio murmuring. Ortiz brought pizza. Riley shined a flashlight deep into the engine bay. Boone grumbled about an unplanned cost, then grinned when I pointed to the reserves column. Already covered. I thought of my father, those noisy dinners, and then I looked at numbers on the board. Quiet but protective. First engine run. I heard Viga's voice reading the liturgy in my head. Fuel, gauges, hydraulics, engine, rotor. The engine caught, shuddered like an animal waking up. The rotor swept the air into a new shape, kicking dust into little whirlwinds. My hand settled on the cyclic like it was a friend's shoulder. Ortiz in the right seat, sweat bright on his forehead, grinned. She lives. We only hovered a few inches, just enough to know the system would listen, then set down. My toe tapped the white paint on the pad. I thanked every obedient bolt under my breath. A line through Vega and Boone's grind got us a small first-season contract. Bucket drops to back a ground crew north of here. Terms weren't pretty, but pretty isn't what flips a master switch. I read the contract like a weather map, marked the turbulence, negotiated a true emergency maintenance carve-out. My signature skated across paper like skids across thick air. Our first fire call hit on a breeze rolling off the ridge. Smoke built a gray wall, the sun smeared orange like a bruised fruit. Over Ike's, the ground lead sounded wrecked from coughing, urgent, still precise. I brought the nose up, kept RPM honest, climbed to safe altitude and rolled into a drop pattern. Ortiz watched temps, Riley staged for hot refuel on the pad. Below, the fire line glowed like an exposed artery. I kept my hands gentle, like touching a wound. The Bambi bucket bit the dip, came up heavy, the ship shook like somebody shouldering an old memory. We turned in and dumped. Steam lifted, sharp with metal salt. On Ike's, one heartbeat of silence, then, good drop. My eyes burned. My hands didn't shake. After the third run, my forearms ached, but the mast stayed true. Checklist and trust, those were the hands flying. We sat down at twilight. Riley hit the hot turn checks. Boone handed me water while still side-eyeing the whiteboard. Ortiz sat on the step and grinned dumb, the face of a man who spent his day right. I walked a slow circle, palmed the skin still holding a little heat. Thank you, I whispered to the machine, to the girl who did the math. Good news moves in short calls. The first contract ran clean. A second, bigger one followed. I bought backup radios, bumped insurance limits, and most important, made payroll on time to the hour. At the old table, I never made anyone wait. Here, my team won't. That night, lights out in the hangar, I sat alone double-checking open maintenance items. The phone buzzed. Unknown number, Montana area code. No hello, just a stone dropping into a well. Were you at these days? No name, but I knew the family tone, soft when asking, hard when pushing. I stared at the screen. In my notebook margin, I'd already written, silence is a tactic. I set the phone face down. Outside, the desert sighed like a big animal going to sleep. The ship had gone cold, but one thing was still running. My control of my own rhythm. I chose silence the way a pilot chooses to hold altitude when the crosswind shifts, not out of fear, but to stay on the flattest air. 3 weeks. I wrote the number on the hangar whiteboard next to the maintenance calendar, boxed it in with dry erase, and read it under my breath like a pre-start. No replies, no explanations, no debates. Breadcrumbs only if needed. Boone raised an eyebrow. Pray the Montana crowd doesn't hit us like a dust storm. I shrugged. We've got a dust storm checklist, too. Day 1, my phone rattled with half-familiar texts, the kind that open with sweetheart and end with an exclamation point that feels like a command wearing perfume. I let them stack on the lock screen, passing through like a ship through thin cloud, noted not engaged. I sent one thing back to the world. A sunset photo over desert sky, sand lit like hot metal, one-word caption, busy. No address, no where you at. A dry crust of bread, proof of life, nothing more. Riley worked shoulder-deep in the engine bay. How long you think you can keep that quiet up? He asked. Silence needs maintenance too, I said. Use it right and it protects the operator. Ortiz laughed. Like a flight helmet? Yeah, I said. Only you wear this one inside your head. They gave me space, a private slice of sky. We lived by clean rhythm, mornings. Boone pinned a weekly contract to the board and ran the fine print. Max gross, forecast temps, tower requirements. I checked the logbook. drew lines through open items, pressed my palm to every warning decal like it was a posted prayer. Don't ignore the obvious. At noon, Riley slid his hand into the bay, listening to an engine cool and puzzling over a whisper. Hairline hissed somewhere behind the pump cluster. Afternoons, Ortiz and I practiced emergency sets on the dirt lot out back, wind curling sand into ribbons, my feet light on the pedals, keeping the body level with a horizon still hot to the touch. From the outside it looked plain. Inside it was 1,000 small decisions, each one deliberate. Day 5, some far cousin lobbed a voice note. "We're just checking in, we heard you're well off, like with a helicopter." I didn't press play. I watched the blue audio wave run out and die. At the desk, Boone glanced up. "Rumors outrun smoke on a windy day." "Smoke you can drown," I said. "Rumor burns out when you starve it of oxygen." I didn't hide. I kept flying, kept signing. I took a picture of my hands, lightly oiled, resting on the stick, posted it to the company page. Training day. Another breadcrumb, but aimed at my world, not my old front door. By week 2, the silence hung heavy like a water bucket under the belly, and my hands remembered how to fly level anyway. Mid-inspection, I'd catch a flash of Dad's helicopter mouth noises, the Christmas hammer asleep in the garage. Those memories are landmarks now, useful for orienting, not circles to hold over until someone notices the banner. One slow assist call on the edge of the woods, nothing heroic, just patience. We sat down under a canlid sky gone red. Orion hadn't punched through yet, but the wind said night was coming. Riley rolled up the fuel truck and handed me cold water. "Hands looked good," he said. "Good," I answered. Short sentences, easier lungs. Ortiz sat on the step and told a New Mexico girlfriend story till his eyes disappeared. I loved that his laugh wanted nothing from me, just a place to land. In moments like that, silence tastes like peace. Late that night, another relative texted, "Your parents are worried. At least answer once." I typed, then erased. Just like you ease the collective up, then settle it back when the air's not honest. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Not answering is also an answer." Back up to see the whole picture. Boone needs me clear tomorrow. The ship needs me steady. Nobody on this team should pay for an aftershock out of Montana. Day 20, the yard guard called. "MS. Lane, a pickup did 2 slow passes by gate 2. Plates unfamiliar." I thanked him, asked for time and description. I didn't fold up like the 17-year-old on the staircase. I stood tall and logged it like weather, wind shift, below hazard threshold. The next mornings I walked the perimeter before sunup, sand crunching, sky so pale blue you wanted to bite it. I palmed door, blade, skin, each touch a pin locking something in place. If you asked me what happiness is, I'd point at that exact minute. Metal still sleeping warm, clean oil, the thought that I built a place where a day can start safe. Witnesses not required. Early week 3, Ortiz said, "We're low on class of foam." Boone added, "And the insurer wants the sprinkler upgrade signed off." I nodded, signed. Didn't even consider texting Montana. I was busy. The phone kept buzzing in the background, like a bug trapped in the grill. I saved my ears for the right calls. Ike's. "Listen to this," from Riley. "Numbers don't match," from Boone. The rest I had the right to postpone. Late on day 19, sodium lights pooled gold circles on the yard. I was inventorying parts when the guard rang again. "You've got a visitor, says he's family." I looked at Boone. He tipped his chin, follow procedure. I walked out to the gate. From a distance, I knew the walk, someone who's always owned the center of the frame. Blue button down, hands in pockets, a friendliness lacquered on for the job. Caleb. I stopped a few paces back, close enough to read his eyes, far enough not to get swept into his old cologne. "Harper." He lifted his arms like a hug was the opening act, then froze when I didn't move. The guard looked to me for the brief. I inhaled. The The checklist in my head slid into place, no feelings, no history, just steps. "What do you want here?" I asked, voice flat as a newly mopped pad. Caleb shrugged, smile darkening like ink hit by water. "Just to talk, family." I didn't answer right away. Night wind slid through, sparking that clean steel smell I trust. Silence this time wasn't hiding. It was a cushion I built between me and the places I used to trip. My thumb found the edge of my dog tags in my pocket. The guard waited. And I knew those 3 weeks weren't to make me louder, just accurate. "Outside the gate," I said. "Wait while I confirm entry procedures." Behind me, the hangar sat quiet as a sleeping animal, and I could hear my own heart stepping into the rhythm I keep for hard landings. Caleb leaned an elbow on the fence like it was our Montana porch, smile flapping in the wind like a flag trying to claim someone else's breeze. Blue check shirt, loose collar, dress shoes polished way too hard for an industrial yard. I stood inside the gate, hands in my jacket pockets, shoulder on the steel post. The guard gave me that little nod we use for confirmed radio traffic. I nodded back. I'd positioned myself with the yard lights behind me so anyone outside had to squint and I could see clear. "Look at you," Caleb opened, voice like a small-town radio host. "Pilot, business owner, I'm proud, you know." He pressed on the eye like slapping a deed on the table. "I'm busy," I said, skipping the family warmth. "Keep it short." He chuckled. "Short then. Times are tough. My store hit a snag. Just need a bridge a couple months and we're good." "Which store?" I asked. I knew, but I want coordinates, not gossip. "The sporting goods chain. Landlord raised the rent, not a big problem. Just need." He rolled his palm like he was selling a product that didn't exist. "A family investor." I glanced at the pickup parked crooked by the curb, dealer sticker still on. "How much are you in?" He pulled a breath, smile dimming a watt. "Numbers scare people. What matters is opportunity. Hey, heard you've got a helicopter." He dropped his voice like helicopter was the password to the vault. "That's an asset, a working one you could convert temporarily." I turned just enough to read his face. Inside my head, the ICS lit certain words: emissary, probe, pride, play. I checked my breathing and held it steady. "Who sent you?" "Family," he said, perfectly straight. "We're one unit, everybody's concerned." "Name?" I tipped my chin. "Who said it?" He laughed it off. "Come on, don't make this a courtroom." "This is a place with rules," I said, flat. "Name." He blinked, then tossed it like a pebble. "Mom, Dad's on board." I nodded. There was the chain of command. I pointed at the rule sign bolted to the gate: no entry without clearance, all comms through the office, cameras recording. "If there's business, I'll schedule with them, not through you." Caleb cocked his head, smiling like a paring knife. "You're difficult. I'm just the go-between. You know, some things are easier man-to-man." "Here," I said, "men and women wear eye protection and respect procedures." He peered over my shoulder into the yard where the ship sat sleeping. "That really yours?" Jealousy stood too close to curiosity in his voice. "I heard you didn't buy it, you built it." Sounds cocky. Not cocky, accurate. His grin thinned. "Do you know how much you've hurt Mom and Dad? You vanished. You ever think how parents feel when a daughter goes silent? You embarrassed them." "My silence doesn't shame anyone," I said. "Actions do." A wrinkle showed between his brows, the guilt-hand hug play just bounced. He switched tactics, softened his voice like fog. "I miss you. Miss my little sister chasing stray balls for me. I just want to untangle a little mess. We're a team, right?" "What team keeps one person picking up balls forever?" I asked, no acid, just true. "If you want finance, bring numbers, terms, rate, collateral. If you want family, have them come themselves. We don't host emissaries here." A short laugh this time with wind scraping enamel. "You talk like a lawyer now." He fished a folded paper from his pocket, shoved it through the gate gap. I didn't take it. "Numbers happy, it's small, call it bridge money. I'll pay it back in 3 months, just a tiny signature." I looked at the paper, the neat round figures skipping like stones, hoping to ripple my focus. No. Harper, he lowered his tone. Who do you think you are? Queen of the desert. Home is still home. Our parents taught us love. I remember them teaching us to be quiet when adults spoke, I said. Here's me speaking, no. He leaned harder into the fence, eyes darkening a shade. You owe the family, they gave you everything. I tilted a corner of my mouth. They gave you everything. They gave me a place to learn silence and work. I folded my arms, signaled the guard with my eyes to step back half a pace so I couldn't be crowded. Email a proposal if you must. My attorney will review. If it's family talk, tell Mom this. If she wants to talk, she shows up herself. I don't do middlemen. Caleb sighed, the inhale before the next push kind. People are talking, you know. You think you can hide that long? Helicopter, contracts, hangar, it all sounds like a fairy tale. They say you got lucky. Luck runs out. Luck is what folks say when they didn't see the reps, I said. I saw them. I flicked my eyes at the guard, not opening the gate. Go home. It's late. He dug deeper into his pockets. Did you know Mom and Dad have to tell neighbors you're busy with grad school? That you're temporarily in Arizona? He searched my face for an ounce of shame. You're making them lose face. No one gets to use their face to collect my money, I said. Go home, Caleb. Something sagged in his shoulders, the smile peeled off like a sticker losing glue. The friendly envoy act was over. Don't think this ends it, he said, voice flat. If you won't pay, you'll hear it from them. They're coming. Good, I said. Adults should talk to adults. He turned, heel grinding gravel. Before the streetlights swallowed him, he looked back. You think you're better 'cause you can fly a loud toy. No fuel, it's scrap. I didn't bite. I've learned to let commentary die while I hold RPM. He slid into the truck, engine lit, headlights swept the fence. He looped slow like he wanted to memorize the route. The guard glanced at me. Need an incident log. Log it, I said. Time, plate, description. From now on, no entry without a written appointment. Back in the office, I shut the glass door. The cool iron smell steadied me. I opened the notebook and logged it like a flight. Unscheduled contact, name, Caleb ask, bridge investment, response, declined note, direct parents if further talk, status, pressure shifted indirect, right arrow direct. I signed it like I sign after a safe landing. Phone buzzed, a text. No contact name, just Mom's number. 4 words, clean, no sweetheart, no exclamation point perfume. We will talk. At your house. I stared at your house a long minute. In Montana, home was the place that showed me the door. Here, home has a whiteboard, clean oil, and a machine that breathes in rhythm with my hands. If they were coming, I'd choose the terrain. I stood, tugged the blinds, and looked out over the yard. Night lay flat as a ruler-drawn line. In the center, a white helipad ring sat still like a target already locked. That's where the last fight would be. They showed up before the light was gone. Last stripe of evening chasing the SUV's shadow all the way to the gate. The yard guard called in the voice you get after a lot of incidents, calm, not requesting my opinion. Your parents, ID checked. They say they have an appointment. On the monitor, Mom was fixing her hair in the visor mirror. Dad had that lean-back look of a judge about to wrap an easy case. Let them in, I said. Straight to the pad. I spun the ship up first. Engine caught. The rotor started its lazy churn, just enough wind to sweep the dust clean. That steady whoop-whoop was a giant's heartbeat in light sleep. I slipped on the headset, jacked into the internal ICS so I could hear the tech calling out RPM. Not to scare anyone, just to set the terrain to one I understand. I always speak better with wind. They climbed out of the SUV and stepped into the wash. The rotor pushed their coats full, then let them fall, like a sigh they didn't want to give me. Dad shaded his eyes against the yard lights. He looked smaller than I remembered, but the voice was the same iron. Shut that noise off, we need to talk. I signaled the tech to hold it safe idle. Out here, I said, to be heard you keep it short and true. Let's begin. Mom took a half step closer, hair flicking her cheek in the slipstream, eyes squinting like she was viewing me through a dirty pane. You disappeared for 3 weeks. Do you know what people are saying? You humiliated us. I pointed at the white circle under my boots. This is my ground. I took 3 weeks so I wouldn't say things I can't pull back. We can talk now. Dad crossed his arms, working on his footing. You think this is your stage? You set up this helipad circus to perform for your parents. I gave him the smallest smile. No, I chose this because here everything runs by procedure. No one blocks a doorway. No one speaks for anyone else. You want the floor, you stand where you belong, you project, and you own your words. Mom rolled out the old script, neighbors, church, how the whole family has been put in a bind, how Caleb carries so much. Each time she said family, the wind shaved the word thin, left a perfume and dust after smell. I let her run the set. When she stopped, I lifted my chin. I'm not a case to be managed. I'm an adult. If this conversation is about money for Caleb, say it into this air. Dad narrowed his eyes. He needs a small float, a short pole to carry him across the season. You have a helicopter, assets sitting idle. You can leverage, you carry our name, you owe that name. I brushed a thumb along my ball cap brim. A name doesn't buy fuel, discipline does. I tapped the ship. Every hour here has a price, every bolt is a promise. I'm not siphoning anything to feed a bottomless hole. Ingrate, Mom snapped. I birthed you, I gave you a roof, and you pick that screeching pile of metal over us. She jabbed a finger at the helicopter like it was another woman in my life. The wind lifted her hand and set it down. I stepped into the paint, close enough that my voice wouldn't shred in the wind, far enough not to crowd. I didn't buy this spot, I said, each word clean as a radio readback. I built it. Dad blinked. Mom froze midpoint. The rotor kept time behind me, steady, patient. I built it with night shifts, with checklists, by not losing track of a single fastener, with on-time payroll, with legal insurance, with every signature. This ground wasn't a gift, it's a consequence. Dad's tone changed to the kind men use right before they try to put you back in your place. You think you're better than people because you can fly that thing. Without gas, it's junk. Unconditional love without respect is junk, I said, not loud, just even. I'm not begging love, I'm offering rules. If you want a place in my life, there are 3. No insults, no money asks, no emissaries. I moved my eyes across theirs. Surprise flashed honest on Mom's face. Dad's lip twitched. And if I don't sign your little rules? He asked. Then we stopped talking, I said, giving the guard a small nod from the corner of my eye. And from now on, all contact routes through council. Mom stretched forward, voice pitched like an over-tight string. You drag strangers into family business. Shame your own parents. She reached for my elbow with that old kitchen move, half pet, half pin. I slid back half a step, polite enough to avoid a scene, firm enough that her hand landed on air. Don't touch me after I've said no, I said. This is a workplace. There are cameras. Everything turns into data. A hard gust crossed the pad. Dust lifted. Dad's coat slapped his body with the sad sound of a losing flag. When it settled, he spoke slow. Who do you think you are to set terms for your parents? He eased a shoe onto the edge of my white line. The guard drifted in a hair by muscle memory. I put my palm down, hold. I wanted the sentence to be mine, not borrowed muscle. I'm the one who pays for my decisions, I said, even the ones that cost the heart. Dad laughed, no audience required. That oil smell has you thinking you belong to this world. He pointed at the hangar, the ship, my crew watching from a respectful distance. You're still the girl who walked away from my table. From that table, I said, I learned to stand up even when no one invites me. Today, I'm inviting you to step out. I turned my head a fraction, enough to carry like a crisp radio command. Escort them out. The guards approached, so courteous it almost felt kind. This way, sir, ma'am. Mom's eyes went round, her mouth opened and shut, as if hunting the word betrayal, and the wind kept stealing it. Dad held a beat like he was trying to redefine power, then peeled off behind her. Their heels clicked gravel periods, evenly spaced. I didn't watch long. I faced the ship and signaled, "Reduce idle, shut down." As the rotor bled off, the noise sucked out of the night like tide from a bay, leaving the ground bare. Dark came without its old bite. Ortiz flashed a thumbs up from the far line. Riley asked, eyebrow only, "Good." Boone tipped his head toward the office. I nodded, "Good," as in within operational limits. I stepped back over the white ring and pulled out my phone. The screen threw a piece of the darkening sky back at me. I scrolled to Maya Chen. Before the first ring, the words were already formed, a memorized brief. "Maya, I need to migrate all family contact to legal. Boundaries delivered face-to-face. Please prepare the standard package, terminate financial ties, establish single lawful channel, and draft a no trespass option if needed." On her end, I heard pen on paper, soft as the rotor's ghost that lingers in the ear when the blades stop, evidence of a machine run right. "When do you want it filed?" she asked. "Now." I looked around the pad, the white circle, the hull still warm to the touch. From now on, I pick my frequency. I pocketed the phone. Desert wind slid through, free of stirred-up grit. If somebody asked whether I'd just done something cruel or brave, I'd say both. The simpler truth, it was safe. And safety, for me, has always been the first ethic. Maya's office sat in a low strip of glass that threw the desert back at itself like a clay-colored map. She slid a stack of papers across the desk, each packet flagged with pale tabs. Boundary notice. Cease all financial support. Sole lawful contact channel. And finally, no trespass option activate upon violation. No knickknacks on her desk, just a heavy black pen. I picked it up and felt the same tremor I felt the first time I eased a ship onto skids. A little shake, still in my hands. I signed where the lines told me to, each stroke like tightening one more bolt. Maya read the terms in a clean, level voice. Any requests for money or in-person encounters route through my office. Any harassment on your premises will be reported with camera evidence. "Copy," I said, and let the breath out, like shutting down after a crosswind landing. In the weeks after, silence stopped being a tactic and turned into flooring. A stray text would pop up and then die on impact when Maya's formal reply arrived, short, bloodless, like the user manual for a safety device. I slept deeper, woke earlier, and dug into making our fire season numbers durable. I bought a spare pump, replaced the warehouse sprinklers, bumped Ortiz's co-pilot coverage. Every task finished felt like a tug on my sleeve from the north let go. Riley hung a new run of tool shelving and labeled everything in big round handwriting, like naming new friends. Boone turned our trainee pipeline into a checklist with a fat, cross-checked column, the same size as Viga's stare in my head. Ortiz started training a young woman named Leela, eyes vector-locked on the horizon like a compass needle. She dropped out once, waited tables to save for a retake. I flipped through her practice log, lines shaky, then steadier the way a heart finds load. I saw myself, someone who won't let a dinner table grade their worth. One afternoon, the postman brought a postcard from Montana. Snowy blue mountains on the front, the back had no sender, just a slanted line. "Hope you're well." Paper rasped like wind along a blade. I didn't go hunting for a story between the letters. I filed it in the metal drawer by my desk, the place for things that need to exist without making noise. Like an indicator bulb that's good, but off. A year passed the way the desert measures time. Heat up, cool down, sand shouldering a few inches. The routes I drew in the sky got darker. We picked up a second ship. Smaller, obedient, perfect for town edge calls. Our contracts improved without miracles because numbers don't lie. Shorter response times, better on-time rate, 3/4 clean on heavy maintenance. In the whiteboard corner, Boone sketched a pair of little wings next to the words Women Wildfire Wings, the training program we'd been building all winter. I stared at the name, throat warming like a step too close to the fire line, but the good kind of heat. Opening day smelled like rain had rinsed the desert clean dirt like polished metal. I got to the hangar early and ran a palm along the ship's skin, hello, right on time. On the table, my pre-flight handbook, homegrown, cover scrawled with a thick marker. Nothing outranks respect. Riley set rows of folding chairs. Ortiz tuned the mic. Boone checked confirmations. They moved like a team that's run in the same wind for a while. The faces at the door were a whole spectrum of life. A former Army medic with a high ponytail, a single mom whose hands still wore engine oil, a tiny kid in borrowed boots. They sat down careful, like laying their best thing on the table in front of them. I threw the first slide up, a white helipad ring under noon sun. Not bragging, an invite. Anybody can step inside the circle if they'll learn balance in wind. I'm Harper, I said, and even I was surprised my voice didn't shake. I fly helicopters on fires. I built this place with checklists and the humility to say I don't know, teach me. In here we don't flex anything except progress. I gave the short version. First time hovering inches off the deck, smoke stinging my eyes while my hands stayed true. How every bolt has a name if you ask it long enough. I didn't talk about that windy night on the pad with my parents. That story's archived now, lesson learned, not lecture material. Class began. I handed out headsets like little keys and adjusted each one to fit. Leela stood beside me with the calm of the youngest master craftsman on Earth. We broke into groups, popped access panels, and read the pre-flight out loud. Fuel gauges, doors, the first copy quavered, then steadied. When a woman named Mariah flubbed a line, I didn't bark. I asked, "What do you hear in the wind?" She blinked, smiled, and read it right. Vega smiled in my memory and stayed quiet. A polar star doesn't need to talk. Outside the hangar door, the light stepped up one notch. I checked my watch. The minute hand hit the number I'd called, 6:40. I breathed into the mic. Pause. Heads came up like a flock taking one cue. Every day starts with boundaries, I said. With fear, with sloppy, with letting someone else fly your voice. This is the moment we buckle in our words. From now on, every copy is a promise that won't break. We did our first hands-on block on the dirt lot out back. Wind light, just enough to remind you the sky has its own ideas. Leela took the right seat, fingers on the stick like on a new instrument. I brought the ship up a few inches, set her down, swapped seats. On the third small cycle, a laugh cracked over ICS, the kind you can't buy at a dinner table when everyone's busy performing. I smiled behind the mic where no one could see. Right place. Right job. After they cleared out, I went back to the office, opened the drawer, took the Montana card out, looked once, put it back. Not because I missed anything, because I wanted to confirm it stayed in its lane, no millimeter of creep into the life I'm living. I hit the lights and stepped out. The hangar held the day's warmth like a gentle animal sleeping. Outside, the desert lay open and flat as fresh paper. I drew a breath that tasted like clean oil and after-rain dirt, something you can't bottle in Montana. I walked across the helipad stripe. Morning sun poured into the white circle, so bright I had to squint. If someone asked me today what family means, I'd point at the folded chairs stacked by the wall and say, it's the people who hear you say copy and remind you of the next checklist line when you're tired. Tomorrow there will be wind again. The ship will rumble, and my hands will remember the path. I pressed my palm to the hull, one more thank you. Somewhere far north, a gust might carry a question without an answer. Here, I already have mine. It isn't loud. It's solid. And when the rotor speaks, everything clicks back into the place I built with my own hands.